imprisoned the Titans in Tartarus, deep within the underworld, where they would remain for eternity under the watchful eye of the Hecaton Kyries. Zeus then divided the cosmos with his brothers. He claimed the skies as his domain, Poseidon took the seas, and Hades ruled the underworld. Together, they established the rule of the Olympians, with Zeus as their undisputed king. But the Titanomachy left scars. Gaia, enraged by the imprisonment of her Titan children, gave birth to new monstrous beings to challenge Zeus's reign. Among them was Typhon, a creature so fearsome that even the gods trembled before him. Typhon's battle with Zeus is another story for another day, but it serves as a reminder that power in the ancient world was never secure. Zeus's rise to power marked the beginning of a new era, but his reign was anything but peaceful. While he was the king of the gods, his rule was marked by constant challenges, from rebellious mortals to jealous deities and his own unquenchable desire for love and control. Zeus was both a protector and a tyrant, a figure who inspired awe and fear. His thunderbolts were a symbol of justice, but they were also a tool of destruction. He fathered countless children, both mortal and divine, and his many affairs often sparked conflict among the gods. Yet, despite his flaws, Zeus's rule brought stability to a chaotic world. Under his reign, the gods established order, overseeing the realms of humans and maintaining the delicate balance between earth, sea, and sky. The myth of Zeus and the Titanomachy isn't just a tale of war. It's a story about the cycles of power and rebellion. Just as Zeus overthrew Cronus, who had overthrown Uranus, Greek myths suggest that even the mightiest rulers are vulnerable to the forces of change. Zeus's story reminds us that leadership comes with its own set of challenges. It's not just about gaining power, it's about maintaining it, often at great cost. Zeus's rise to power is one of the most thrilling tales in mythology, filled with battles, alliances, and sacrifices. But what do you think? Was Zeus a just ruler, or was he simply another tyrant destined to fall like the Titans before him? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this dive into Greek mythology, share it with fellow myth lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more epic tales from the ancient world. Until next time, remember, the gods may rule from above, but their stories remind us of the struggles we all face below. Imagine a woman so terrifying that a single glance from her could turn anyone into stone. Medusa, a name that echoes through history as a monster, a villain, and a symbol of pure horror. But what if everything you thought you knew about her was wrong? Medusa wasn't always a monster. Her story is one of betrayal, injustice, and a curse she never deserved. She wasn't born a villain. She was made into one by the gods themselves. But even as a victim, she found a way to turn her tragedy into power. Today, we'll unravel the myth of Medusa and discover the deeper truth behind her story. From her tragic origins to her transformation into a feared Gorgon, to her epic confrontation with Perseus. This is the tale of Medusa like you've never heard it before. Long before the snakes, before the curse, Medusa was a mortal woman of extraordinary beauty. She wasn't born a monster. She was born human, the daughter of the sea gods, Phorcys and Ceto. While her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were immortal Gorgons, Medusa stood apart as the only mortal among them. But it wasn't her mortality that set her apart. It was her beauty. Medusa's golden hair, radiant complexion, and striking eyes captured the attention of everyone, even the gods. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, vowing to remain pure and devoted to the goddess. This is where her life took a tragic turn. According to the myth, Poseidon, the god of the sea, became infatuated with Medusa. Overcome by desire, he pursued her relentlessly, and one fateful day he cornered her in Athena's temple. Medusa, defenseless, could not escape his wrath. But instead of protecting her, Athena turned her fury against Medusa. The goddess, enraged by the desecration of her temple, cursed Medusa for what had happened, punishing the victim instead of the perpetrator. Athena's curse transformed Medusa into a gorgon, a being so hideous that no one could bear to look at her. Her golden hair turned into a nest of venomous snakes, and her eyes became so powerful that a single glance could turn living creatures to stone. This moment defined Medusa's new existence. Once revered for her beauty, she was now feared and hunted as a monster. But beneath the horror of her transformation lay a deeper question. Was Medusa truly cursed, or had she been given a weapon to defend herself in a world that had betrayed her? Medusa fled from civilization, retreating to a remote island where she lived in solitude. Here she came to terms with her new form and the terror it inspired. The snakes in her hair hissed constantly, and her reflection, once a source of pride, was now a weapon she couldn't dare to look at. But the world wouldn't let her rest. Tales of the monster of the island spread across Greece, and soon warriors came seeking glory by trying to slay her. None succeeded. Each challenger who entered her domain fell victim to her petrifying gaze, their bodies forever frozen in stone. Medusa's life became one of survival, fending off those who sought to destroy her while grappling with the isolation of her curse. She was trapped in a cycle of violence she didn't choose, but couldn't escape. As the years passed, Medusa's story became twisted. In the eyes of mortals, she was no longer the victim of a cruel curse, but a monster to be feared. The tragic young woman was lost to legend, replaced by the image of a terrifying villain. Enter Perseus, a young demigod with a destiny to fulfill. Tasked with bringing back Medusa's head as proof of his strength, Perseus embarked on a perilous journey to find her. But unlike the warriors before him, Perseus wasn't relying solely on his skill. He had the favor of the gods. Athena and Hermes provided Perseus with gifts to help him on his quest. Winged sandals to fly, a reflective shield to avoid Medusa's gaze, and a sword sharp enough to cut through anything. Most importantly, he was given a magical bag to safely carry her severed head. Perseus's journey to Medusa's lair was filled with danger, but none compared to the final challenge, facing the Gorgon herself. When Perseus arrived, Medusa was sleeping. For the first time in years, she looked peaceful, an almost human reminder of who she once was. But Perseus couldn't afford to hesitate. Using the reflective shield as a mirror, he avoided her petrifying gaze and struck with precision, severing her head in one swift motion. The blood that spilled from Medusa's neck gave birth to two incredible beings, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chryser, a golden giant. Even in death, Medusa's body produced miracles, a testament to the power she had carried within her. Perseus carried Medusa's severed head back to Greece, where it became both a trophy and a weapon. Her gaze retained its power, turning enemies into stone, and Perseus used it to defeat his foes and protect his people. But Medusa's story didn't end with her death. Over time, her image transformed from that of a monster to a symbol of strength and defiance. Women, especially, began to reclaim her story, seeing her as a figure who resisted the gods and survived unimaginable betrayal. Today, Medusa is more than a mythological figure. She's an icon. Her face appears in art, literature, and even modern movements that challenge systems of power and oppression. But the question remains, was Medusa truly a monster, or was she a victim of a world that feared her power? Medusa's story is a reminder that myths are more than just tales of gods and heroes. They're reflections of human nature, of the injustices and triumphs we still see today. So, what do you think? Was Medusa a villain, or was she a misunderstood symbol of resilience? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a like if you found her story as fascinating as we did, And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the myths and legends that continue to shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep looking beyond the surface. Welcome back, lore hunters. Tonight I'm unwrapping some myths that slip through the cracks of pop culture, tales so rich you could live in them for weeks. Let the veils fall. Old Phaon hauled passengers between Lesbos and Asia Minor in a skiff patched more than a beggar's coat. One dusk he carried an aged woman for free when storms cancelled the rich man's coin. She touched his wrist, her skin warmed like sunrise. That crone revealed herself as Aphrodite. Payment: an alabaster jar of rose-scented balm. Phaon rubbed a dab on his temples. Waves reflected a new face, jaw sharp, curls ink black. Word of the god-veined ferryman blitzed across isles. Queens queued for night voyages. Fame fed on humility until none was left. Phaon mocked old lovers, hiked his fares, painted his hull with gold leaf. Aphrodite, hearing temple incense now dedicated to Phaon instead of herself, revisited, this time as a scarred sailor claiming poverty. Rebuked, she cursed the balm to invert. Every admiring gaze would now age him a year. By next moon, the once idol looked like driftwood. He vanished, some say into the strait's whirlpool, others into a hermit cave. Poets still swear his ghostly skiff appears on starless nights. If you board, you arrive at dawn a decade older, pockets full of rose petals that rot before noon. Queen Althea of Calydon screamed through her labor as the hearth fire hissed. From the embers a coal spat out, a single firebrand the length of a dagger. The fates appeared, scissors glinting. Lachesis measured the newborn's life against that coal. Clotho whispered, "When the wood is ash, the boy is dust." Althea snatched the brand, quenched it in a silver urn, and hid it under her bed. The baby, Meleager, grew into a spear god in the training yard. None but his mother guessed why storms seemed to pause for him. Years later, Artemis loosed a boar monstrous as a siege tower to punish King Oeneus for a skipped sacrifice. Hunters from every Greek polis gathered. Meleager led, eyes bright as forge fire. Among the heroes strode Atalanta, swift, lethal, and female, an affront to the older princes. In the thicket, Atalanta's arrow struck first blood. Meleager's spear finished the beast. He offered her the pelt. Male egos erupted. Two of Meleager's uncles drew blades. Meleager defended the huntress, slaying his own kin. Word sprinted ahead of him to the palace. Althea collapsed at news her brothers lay dead by her son's hand. Grief wrestled prophecy in her chest. Shaking, she fetched the firebrand, lit a torch, and held both over the brazier. Her love warred her rage for 9 heartbeats. On the 10th, she let the wood slip. Miles away, Meleager felt his marrow ignite. He dropped mid-stride, armor ringing like a funeral bell. At the palace hearth, the brand hissed its last and fell to gray powder. Althea watched the flakes swirl, then walked into the flames herself. In Calydon, they still say, "Whatever a mother births, her fire can reclaim." Young Cyparissus roamed Chios with a bronze shepherd's crook taller than himself. Apollo, idling in mortal disguise, gifted the boy a tame stag crowned with ivory antlers. It followed him like sunrise follows dawn. One blistering noon, flies tormented the stag. Cyparissus, meaning only mercy, aimed his javelin to shoe them. The tip glanced off a stone, pierced soft flank. The deer collapsed, breath misting blood. Cyparissus dropped beside it, sobs carving caverns in his throat. Apollo arrived to heal, lyre weeping gold notes. But the boy refused salvation for himself. He begged, "Give me a grief that never dries, so I remember him forever." Clouds boiled violet, the ground drank color from his sandals upward. Where Cyparissus knelt now stands the first cypress, trunk straight as a spear of morning, sap weeping resin tears. Greeks plant the tree in graveyards because its roots plunge only downward, never sideways, like a grief that refuses distraction. On summer nights, hunters claim the wind through cypress needles sounds like antlers brushing the sky. Athens hailed Cephalus and Procris as couple of the century, he an expert hunter, she a devotee of Artemis. As wedding gift, the goddess sent two marvels, Lalaps, a hound fated to catch any quarry, and a spear destined never to miss. One morning Cephalus rested from the chase and sang to the breeze, calling it Nephele, sweet comfort. The dawn goddess Eos, eavesdropping, snatched him skyward, offering immortality. He pined for Procris. Eos scoffed, "She'll betray you." Suspicion slid under his skin like splintered arrow reeds. Cephalus returned in disguise, bribing servants to hint Procris had strayed. At twilight she arrived in the woods, masked, to spy on him first. Hearing rustle, Cephalus loosed the divine spear toward the sound. It cannot miss. The mask tore away, Procris's eyes wide as shattering glass. She fell against his chest, whispering only, "The breeze, remember?" Cephalus buried her on Mount Hymettus, pinned the fatal spear beside the grave, and leashed Laiolaps there eternally. Some nights hikers see a spectral dog chase a phantom hare in circles that never close, while a jealous wind mutters the name Nephele through the pines. Poor farmer Ligdus told his pregnant wife, if the child is female, exposure must follow. Dowries ruin paupers. Desperate Telethusa prayed to Isis. The goddess appeared, golden-winged. Bear the child, raise her as son. Baby Iphis arrived. They bound her chest, taught her spearcraft, named her heir. At 13, Iphis was betrothed to radiant Ianthe, who adored her future husband. Iphis loved her too, but carried a secret that tore her apart. Nights she begged Isis, either unmake love or unmake lie. Eve of the wedding, Iphis roamed the temple till exhaustion. At midnight, statue eyes flashed, muscle quaked under skin, voice dropped like falling figs. When dawn trumpets blew, Iphis emerged, broad-shouldered, jaw square, still wearing mother's hopes, but now truth-shaped. Ceremony erupted in double amazement. A father spared from murder, a bride gaining the groom her heart already knew, a city given a living parable that gods can edit flesh the way poets edit verse. On anniversaries, Crete's couples exchange braided veils, symbol that love may bend rules when petitioned with courage. Satyr-blooded Ampelus dazzled Dionysus, youth swagger, curls like grape tendrils. He rode a bull through vineyards, boasting he was braver than the god. Dionysus, half teasing, half testing, sent a gadfly. The bull bucked. Ampelus flew, spine meeting earth with a wet crack. Thunderclouds curdled purple. Grief-stricken, the god plucked the corpse's heartbeat, planted it. From ribs sprouted twisting vines, from fingers curling shoots. First grapes. He fermented their juice with tears, naming the wine Ampelosios, the taste of regret. Every toast pours a little myth, sweetness chased by sting. Drink deep and you repeat the boy's brag, but this time, hopefully, know when to dismount. On the gray docks of Anthedon, a lone fisherman named Glaucus noticed something odd. Every fish he caught leapt back into the sea after flopping across a patch of wild green herbs. His curiosity, half hunger, half science, won. He tasted one leaf. A heartbeat later, his pulse throttled like a war drum. Gills tore open on his neck. Terrified, he dove overboard and discovered he could breathe brine like air. In the midnight blue below, sea deities gathered, nereids swirling like living lace, old Phorcys with crab-shell crown. They greeted the newcomer, then forced a cup of ichor on him. Drink, forget the shore. Visions blitzed his skull, shipwrecks yet to come, lovers yet to drown. Prophecy is a toxin that never metabolizes. Glaucus tried to surface, to hug his aging mother, but every wave slapped him back. Barnacles crusted over his old rowing calluses. He practiced his new craft instead, whispering tides to sailors, trading secrets for offerings of bronze and bread that sank unreachable. Legend says if you stare into rough surf and hear your own name, it's Glaucus warning you to turn home. Ignore him, and you join his choir. Another voice lost to the deep. In Attica ruled Periphas, so just that subjects built temples to him, not Zeus. Offerings piled higher than to Olympus. Flattery sharpens divine talons. Thunderhead over the palace. As lightning coiled to strike, Apollo intervened. Spare the righteous, punish the praise. Zeus relented, halfway. Before the court's eyes, Periphas's flesh rippled into plumage, arms broadened into storm-breaker wings. His queen begged accompaniment, became an osprey. Throne room glittered with abandoned gold. Zeus decreed the new eagle his personal herald, immortal, hungry for serpents of hubris. Every lightning flash, tradition holds Periphas scouts ahead, making sure no mortal altars bear the wrong name again. Arcadian huntress Callisto pledged lifelong virginity to Artemis. Oaths echo loudest in forest silence. Zeus, disguised as Artemis, tricked Callisto when her secret pregnancy showed. The real goddess burned with double fury, betrayed and impersonated. Artemis transformed the girl into a shaggy bear. Callisto's newborn, Arcus, left human. Years later, on a hunt, Arcus drew bow at the lunging bear, unaware it was his mother. Zeus intervened, flinging both into the sky as Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. They circle Polaris forever, never touching, an eternal near miss engraved in stars. Notice how each story spins one spindle. Desire collides with destiny, and form shatters. Greek myth isn't merely about gods showing off, it's about limits, and the instant you cross them, reality melts and recools into shapes that remember the crime. Which of tonight's transformations branded you hardest? Firebrand, spear, cypress, rose curse, or braided veil? Write its name in the comments, but add one line. If this myth were my life lesson, I'd finish the sentence. Best confession gets read on next episode, immortal as any Greek hero. Slap that like if you felt the heat of Meleager's log or the sea spray of Phaon's oars. Subscribe and ring the bell so the algorithm threads your name into our next tapestry. Remember, stories are sparks. Hold them too lightly and they fade. Grip them too hard and they burn. Find your balance. See you in the weave.
Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war, and strategy, was one of the most powerful deities in Greek mythology. Feared by enemies, honored by heroes, and even challenging Zeus himself, Athena's legacy shaped legends, wars, and the very foundations of civilization. But was she truly a goddess of justice, or was there a darker side to her wisdom? Let's dive into the real story of Athena. Athena wasn't born like other gods. She burst fully grown from Zeus's head, armed with a spear and shield, a goddess of war and wisdom from the very start. But her story is more than just divine power. It's one of strategy, conflict, and influence that shaped the Greek world. The protector of heroes, Athena wasn't just a warrior. She was a tactician, a guide, and the ultimate ally to heroes. She helped Odysseus outwit the gods, gave Perseus the shield to defeat Medusa, and was the unseen force behind many Greek victories. The battle for Athens, Athena and Poseidon competed for control of the greatest city in Greece. Poseidon offered a mighty ocean, but Athena gave the olive tree, a symbol of wisdom and prosperity. The people chose her gift, and Athens was named in her honor. The merciless judge? Athena may have been wise, but was she just? When Medusa was assaulted in her temple, Athena didn't punish Poseidon, she punished Medusa, turning her into a monster. Later, she created the first court of law, showing her power wasn't just in battle, it was in justice, law, and politics. Wisdom and war, always balanced. Unlike Ares, the god of chaos and bloodshed, Athena's warfare was tactical, calculated, and precise. She was the goddess of the battlefield, but also the goddess of philosophy, craftsmanship, and knowledge, a balance between violence and intelligence. Her lasting legacy, Athena's symbols, the owl, the shield, and the olive tree, still represent wisdom, strategy, and peace today. The Parthenon, her great temple, still stands, and her influence can be seen in modern philosophy, war strategy, and even democracy itself. Athena wasn't just a goddess of wisdom, she was a warrior, a ruler, and a force that shaped civilizations. But was she truly wise, or just the ultimate strategist who always got her way? Want more deep dives into legendary gods and goddesses? Subscribe now and uncover the myths and realities of ancient deities.
What would you do if you gave up everything for love, only to be betrayed by the one you trusted most? In the Greek myth of Medea, love led to ultimate revenge, and the consequences were deadly. Let's dive into this tragic tale. Medea, a sorceress of immense power, fell in love with Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, when he came to her homeland seeking help. Medea, who was deeply in love with him, used her magic to aid him in his quest for the Golden Fleece. She betrayed her own family, murdered her brother, and helped Jason achieve his goal, all out of love for him. Once Jason had the fleece, Medea fled with him to Greece, where they started a life together. But as time went on, Jason's love for Medea faded. He decided to marry Glauce, the daughter of Creon, the king of Corinth, in an effort to secure a more powerful position. Medea, heartbroken and furious at the betrayal, decided to exact her revenge. She used her powers to craft a poison so deadly that it would burn Glauce alive when she put on a beautiful dress that Medea had sent her as a gift. But Medea didn't stop there. In her grief and rage, she murdered her own children, Jason's children, to ensure he would suffer the most for his betrayal. The pain of losing everything she loved was unbearable, and Medea, having left nothing behind but destruction, fled to Athens, leaving Jason to wallow in his sorrow and regret. Medea's story is a tragic reminder of the destructive power of betrayal and the extreme lengths to which love can drive someone. Sometimes love is not only blind, but it can also lead to devastation and vengeance. Does Medea's vengeance leave you thinking about the darkest side of love? Subscribe for more ancient Greek myths filled with twists, power, and passion. Loki's punishment was brutal. Bound deep within a cavern, his body lashed to 3 jagged rocks with the entrails of his own son. Above him, a serpent hung poised, venom dripping relentlessly onto his exposed skin. This scene, drawn from the poetic Edda and the prose Edda, became a symbol of both divine vengeance and suffering that echoed through Norse legend. But the gods never counted on one presence: Sigyn, Loki's faithful wife. Her hands trembled as she knelt beside him, catching each drop of poison before it could sear his flesh. Her quiet devotion became a fragile shield against the god's wrath. Why did she choose loyalty over escape? The answer reveals a truth about love that endures even when the world itself seems lost to darkness. Yet before the cavern, before the venom and the silence, there was a betrayal that shook the heart of Asgard. Baldur was the light of Asgard, cherished by gods and mortals alike. His laughter filled the halls, a warmth that even the golden apples of Idun could not rival. When ominous dreams began to trouble him, his mother Frigg, desperate to protect her son, secured oaths from every creature and object in existence never to harm him. All, that is, except the mistletoe, too slight, too innocent to warrant suspicion. Loki saw opportunity in what others dismissed. He fashioned a dart from that fragile branch and sought out Hoder, Baldur's blind brother. "Here," Loki murmured, placing the weapon in Hoder's uncertain grasp, "let me guide your hand." The dart struck its mark. In an instant, Baldur's light was snuffed out, his presence gone from the world. The gods stood in stunned silence, their joy shattered. Loki lingered in the shadows, the faintest smile on his lips, before slipping away unseen. The prose Edda tells us the pyre burned for 9 nights. Baldur's wife, Nanna, overcome with grief, cast herself onto the flames, her spirit entwined with his. The gods heaped treasures upon the funeral bier, Odin's ring Draupnir, Baldur's own ship Hringhorni, to honor him, but no offering could fill the void left behind. The air grew heavy with suspicion. As the smoke twisted skyward, word spread of an old woman whispering to Hoder in the moments before the fatal blow. When Thor forced the truth from a trembling servant, silence fell like a shroud. Loki's name was not spoken, but its weight pressed upon every heart. The gods had tolerated his mischief, his clever lies, even the theft of Sif's hair. But this was different. The poetic Edda names him plainly: Loki, the guileful who brought it about, from which all misfortune came. Odin convened the gods to pass judgment. No mead flowed, no boasts rang out. The All-Father's single eye burned cold as he named Loki Oathbreaker and Kinslayer. Weapons gleamed in restless hands. Even gentle Friar's fingers tightened around his sword. Loki understood the god's fury. He fled Asgard, his mind racing with schemes. As told in the prose Edda, he built a lodge in the mountains, doors on every side, always watching for his pursuers. Still, he could not outrun their vengeance. Odin's gaze found him, even in hiding. When the gods arrived, Loki tried to slip away, transforming into a salmon to evade capture in the river's swift current. But Thor's grip proved stronger than fate. Dragged back through the gates he once helped raise, Loki passed faces twisted with anger and betrayal. The gods' judgment was swift. The path ahead led not to mercy, but to a place where pain and silence waited in the damp and the dark. They forced Loki into the heart of the earth, a cavern where the air pressed cold and heavy, and every sound echoed off stone walls, slick with damp. Water dripped steadily from above, each drop magnifying the hush that settled over the gods as they set to their grim task. The stench of venom lingered, sharp and persistent, mingling with the iron tang of old blood. Odin's single eye caught the flicker of Skadi's movement. A silent nod passed between them, sealing what would come next. 3 massive boulders, freshly gouged with holes, stood ready. The gods had not brought chains or rope. Instead, they made Loki's punishment a reflection of his own chaos. The prose: Edda tells us they transformed one son, Vali, into a wolf who slew his brother, Nari. With the entrails of Nari turned to iron by the god's will, they bound Loki fast, wrists, neck, thighs, and ankles locked tight against the unyielding stone. As the Völuspá declares, with the guts of his ice-cold son, the killer is bound. Each knot and twist was deliberate, a reminder that his own blood now held him captive. The weight of the rocks pressed into his flesh, a constant ache that would never fade. Skadi stepped forward, her presence sharp as frost. In her hands a serpent writhed, its fangs gleaming. She fixed the creature to a stalactite directly above Loki's face. "For Baldur," she said, her voice steady and cold. The serpent's jaws parted, and a bead of venom gathered at its tip. It hung for a moment, then fell. Loki's scream reverberated through the cavern, his body arching in agony as the venom burned into his skin. The pain was relentless, searing into bone, and the world above felt its echoes, earthquakes shaking Midgard, rivers shifting, the roots of Yggdrasil quivering. The gods watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Justice, they believed, had been served. As the serpent's venom continued its slow assault, the rhythm of torment became all-consuming. The next drop formed, poised to fall. Then a figure emerged at the edge of the chamber, a woman, silent, a wooden bowl cradled in her hands. Sigin's arms were blistered, her sleeves stained, but her grip was unwavering as she stepped into the circle of pain. The cavern held its breath. Sigyn knelt, her presence a quiet defiance. The venom hissed into the bowl, wood darkening with each drop. The gods turned away, their judgment complete, but the story within the cavern was only beginning. The bowl rested in Sigyn's hands, its wooden sides polished by hours of silent endurance. She knelt on the cold stone, skirts bunched beneath her, and waited for the serpent's venom to fall. The first drop struck with a hiss, a thin wisp of smoke curling up as Loki's breath caught in his throat. She kept her gaze fixed on the bowl, her resolve anchored by the rhythm of her task. Time unraveled in the cavern, marked only by the relentless cadence of the venom. Drip, catch. The liquid sizzled as it struck the wood, the heat seeping through Sigyn's calloused palms. Each shift of her grip was subtle, a quiet adjustment to keep the bowl steady as her arms ached. Above, the serpent's shadow twisted over the stone, its coils unmoving, its venom gathering in slow, deliberate drops. Loki whimpered, bracing for pain that had become his constant companion. The sound of his dread was sharper than his cries. The air hung heavy with the stench of scorched flesh and the metallic sting of poison. The darkness pressed in, broken only by the faint glimmer of Sigyn's tears as they mixed with venom in the bowl, each drop a testament to her resolve. The silence between drops was punctuated by Loki's ragged breaths and the distant echo of water dripping from the cavern walls. Sigyn's world narrowed to the weight in her arms and the threat above. The bowl filled, the venom rising perilously close to the rim. Sigyn's muscles trembled, but she did not let her grip falter. When at last the bowl brimmed, she had no choice but to turn away. In that brief moment, as she emptied the venom onto the rocks, Loki's body convulsed, his scream raw and unrestrained. The poison ate into the stone, leaving blackened scars as Sigyn hurried to wipe the bowl clean and return to her vigil. For time beyond reckoning, Sigyn remained. The myth offers no window into her thoughts, only the image of her kneeling, unwavering as Loki's mind splintered under the weight of his agony. Was she remembering laughter in sunlit halls, or simply unable to imagine leaving him alone in the dark? The venom's rhythm never changed. The bowl would fill. Loki would suffer. Sigyn would endure. In the hush that followed each scream, a question lingered, one that neither gods nor mortals could answer. Love in the dark was never simple. While the gods turned away, Sigyn remained, her presence reshaping the meaning of Loki's punishment. His betrayals had echoed through Asgard, yet her loyalty was a force the gods never expected. The Eddas offer no window into Sigyn's thoughts, recording only her actions. Blistered hands, a steady bowl, venom caught before it could sear flesh. This silence leaves space for us to wonder. Was it love that held her there, or a deeper sense of duty, something older and more enduring than the gods' own laws? Loki, once the master of deception, now depended on the mercy of the one he had so often left in the shadows. When the bowl overflowed and Sigyn turned away, each drip crept like fire through him, twisting his features in agony. His eyes, when they met hers, flickered with both gratitude and resentment. He needed her, but the venom's torment mingled need with bitterness. Still, Sigyn returned every time, catching the next drop before it could fall. The myths do not say what passed between them in those moments, only that she stayed, her resolve unbroken. Scholars often call Sigyn the embodiment of loyalty, the ultimate symbol of spousal devotion. Yet, her sacrifice was more than an act of love. It was a quiet rebellion. By kneeling in the cavern, she defied the gods' vision of justice. Odin had crafted Loki's punishment to be absolute, to break him alone in the dark. Sigyn's refusal to abandon her husband became a shield, her presence a silent protest that denied the gods complete victory. The Eddas never assign her a motive, leaving modern readers to fill the silence with their own questions and interpretations. Was her endurance an act of compassion or a challenge to the order imposed by the gods? Each drip marked the passage of time, each bowlful a measure of suffering and steadfastness. Loki's laughter, once quick and sharp, faded into broken gasps. His words, sometimes curses, sometimes pleas, found no purchase. Sigyn's hands grew raw and ruined, but she did not falter. The cycle of pain and mercy continued, unbroken. In the end, it was not just Loki who endured the gods' punishment. Sigyn's vigil transformed it, turning isolation into a shared ordeal. In the darkness, her silent defiance and unwavering love became part of the myth, a testament to the power of presence, even when the world has turned away. Sigyn's vigil stands as one of Norse myth's quiet marvels, a steady presence in the shadows, her strength measured not in battle, but in endurance beside the one the gods condemned. As Loki writhed beneath the venom's relentless burn, Sigyn's hands never wavered. The Eddas remember her not for words or deeds of glory, but for the silent rhythm of her care. Her story reminds us that sometimes love endures in darkness. Sigyn's vigil continues until the twilight of the gods, Ragnarok, whenever that may come. Would you have stayed? If Sigyn's silent strength moved you, let us know in the comments or share your favorite Norse hero below. Centaurs, half man, half horse, heroes or savages? Think you know the full story? Wait until you uncover the darker side of these iconic creatures. Watch till the end to discover what ancient myths don't tell you about the Centaurs. In Greek mythology, centaurs were seen as both wild and noble beings. They were often depicted as powerful warriors, famous for their strength and skill in battle. But what if the truth behind them was far more sinister than anyone imagined? While some centaurs, like Chiron, were revered for their wisdom and kindness, many others were violent, uncontrollable creatures. These savage centaurs were known for their drunken brawls and uncontrollable rage. The most infamous event? The Battle of the Lapiths and Centaurs, where they fought against the Lapiths during a wedding feast, leading to a massacre of both men and women. Their brutal behavior was more than just a mythological tale. It symbolized the chaos that could occur when civilization collided with the wild, untamed forces of nature. But why did the Greeks depict centaurs this way? Was it a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and savagery, or a deeper reflection on humanity's struggle between reason and instinct? The darker truth behind the centaur myth might just hold the key to understanding the wild, primal side of ancient Greek culture. Centaurs are more than just mythical beasts. They represent the conflict within us all. If you're fascinated by the hidden truths of ancient myths, don't forget to subscribe for more dark stories from Greek mythology. Ever wondered what it would be like to walk through the ancient world and encounter mythical creatures from Greek mythology? Get ready to meet the beasts that shaped legends. In Greek mythology, creatures were more than just beasts. They were symbols of the forces of nature, God's will, and humanity's struggle with the unknown. From the terrifying Minotaur lurking in the labyrinth to the mesmerizing sirens luring sailors to their doom, These creatures were as captivating as they were dangerous. The mighty Hydra, with its multiple heads that regrew each time they were cut off, was a symbol of unstoppable power. The Cerberus, the three-headed dog guarding the gates of the underworld, represented the barrier between life and death. But not all mythical creatures were monsters. The graceful Pegasus, a winged horse born from the blood of Medusa, symbolizes freedom and the pursuit of the heavens. These creatures still live on in our stories, haunting the shadows of ancient Greece and whispering through the winds of time. Which Greek mythological creature fascinates you the most? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for more legendary tales from Greek mythology. Imagine being one of the greatest hunters in the world, known for your unmatched speed and skill. But despite all your abilities, your destiny is determined by a simple golden apple. Let me tell you the tragic tale of Atalanta, the huntress who couldn't escape her fate. Atalanta was abandoned at birth by her father, Zeus, who didn't want a daughter. Left to die in the wilderness, she was raised by a she-bear, learning to hunt and survive. As she grew, Atalanta became a legendary warrior, her skills in hunting unmatched. But no matter how great she became, she could never escape one thing: her prophecy. A prophecy foretold that Atalanta would only marry a man who could outrun her in a race. As the years went by, many suitors came, eager to win her hand. But Atalanta, fiercely independent, defeated them all. Her speed was unbeatable, and no man could match her skill. Then came Medea, a brave hero who had heard of Atalanta's strength and beauty. Unlike the others, he didn't boast about his abilities. Instead, he came prepared with a plan. Medea, knowing Atalanta's curse, asked the goddess Aphrodite for help. She granted him 3 golden apples, which he used to distract Atalanta during their race. As Atalanta raced ahead, confident of her victory, Medea tossed the apples one by one in her path. The golden apples were so beautiful, they distracted Atalanta just enough to slow her down. In the end, Medea won the race, and Atalanta was forced to marry him, despite her reluctance to give up her independence. But the story doesn't end in happiness. Atalanta and Medea's marriage was plagued with regret. Atalanta, still driven by her need for freedom, felt trapped by the very love she couldn't escape. And in the end, Medea, whose destiny was also marked by the gods, tragically died before she could ever truly be free. Atalanta's story is a tale of love, fate, and the clash between personal destiny and desire. Despite her unmatched strength and independence, her fate was sealed by love, and her story remains a tragic reminder of how even the most powerful can be brought down by what they cannot control. If Atalanta's bittersweet story of fate and love left you in awe, subscribe for more untold Greek myths and the heroes who shaped the ancient world. Ask most people about Greek myth and you get 12 labors, a Gorgon's haircut, or a fire thief nailed to a cliff. Tonight we leave the doom scroll and open the side door, some lesser-known legends where the gods give instead of take. Pour something you love, silence the group chat, because each tale rolls out in 4 acts, exactly like a Netflix mini-EP. First jar on the left, a polished grain of barley the size of a thumbnail. Let's pry it open. Eleusis, dusk. Fields are dust. Demeter still mourns Persephone. Villagers starve, except Triptolemus, teen son of King Celeus, who offers the goddess barley porridge cooked from his final handful of grain. Moved, Demeter turns her grief to gratitude and hands him a leather pouch of enchanted seed. Demeter's next gift is wilder, a bronze chariot yoked to 2 serpents the size of river dolphins. They hiss, but obey her touch. Fly, she tells Triptolemus, and sow the earth. He launches like steam from a kettle, dragons beating emerald wings over seas and mountains, seed flitting from his fist, taking root the instant it kisses dirt. Triptolemus lands in Scythia, demonstrates plowing, and shares bread hotter than sunrise. Their ruler Lincus smiles, then creeps into the guest hut with a dagger, planning to steal credit. Demeter's serpents coil awake, eyes phosphorescent. Steel meets scale. The goddess materializes and, with a snap, turns Lincus into the first lynx, forever stalking fields he can never harvest. Triptolemus lifts off again, safer and wiser, dragons spiraling like living irrigation lines. Everywhere wheat sprouts, famine folds, and villages invent words for thank you. When he finally parks the chariot in Eleusis, Demeter names him patron of farmers and slots a constellation, the sower, above the autumn sky. Rural Greeks still claim that seeing twin shooting stars at harvest means Triptolemus's dragons are checking yields. In Achaean ripes, stonemason Mycilus woke 3 nights running to the same dream. Hercules, lion skin reeking of cedar smoke, beckoned him across the sea to the pebble-dappled waters of Asar. Leaving one's birthplace was illegal, but divine persistence outweighs city ordinances. Neighbors dragged him before the civic tribunal. Verdicts were cast with white, acquit, and black, condemn, pebbles dropped into an urn. Mycilus prayed under his breath. As judges emptied the urn, every stone, white and black alike, shone snow-white. Gasps. No law forbade miracle loopholes, so the council shrugged and released their suddenly blameless defendant. Mycilus sailed west. At Italy's heel, he found the river Asar flashing with pale cobbles, exact match to his dream. He also found an old burial mound dedicated to a local hero named Croton, once hospitable to Hercules himself. Prophecy clicked like a lock. He founded Croton on that spot, planting the first stone in the new city wall with his own calloused hands. 2 generations later, Croton would dominate Magna Graecia in athletics and medicine, home of Milo the wrestler and Pythagoras' school. Locals still tell tourists to pocket a white pebble for courage, Hercules' ancient thumbs up. On Crete, baby Zeus hides from Cronus inside the Idaean cave. A gentle goat, Amalthea, nurses him with milk so sweet it smells of thyme. Curate's warriors clash shields outside to drown infant cries. Toddler Zeus, already wrestling destiny, grabs Amalthea's horn during roughhousing. It snaps off. Horrified, he touches the broken horn and wills it to pour ambrosia and jewels, an apology in infinite supply. The horn becomes cornucopia, everlasting symbol of abundance. Amalthea is lifted to the stars as Capella, brightest goat in the sky. Every harvest festival, Greeks tip wine from a horn-shaped rhyton, so the cave child remembers. The practice survives today in the very shape of Thanksgiving centerpieces, because one young god learned that breaking something you love can birth generosity that never runs dry. Argos prepares a grand procession to Hera's temple 6 miles away. Oxen assigned to pull the gilded cart of priestess Sidip, aka Mo or Awal. Her sons, athletes Cleobus and Biton, lock eyes and shrug. We're the oxen today. They yoke themselves, veins corded, and drag the 2-ton cart under Mediterranean noon. Crowds scatter petals, sweat rains on marble road. At the temple steps, mother dismounts, trembling with pride. Sidippe prays, "Great Hera, grant my sons the best blessing a mortal can have." After sacrifice and feast, the exhausted brothers fall asleep in the sacred hall, smiles still ghosting their faces. They never wake. Peaceful exit at peak glory, Hera's idea of the highest gift. Argives commission life-size statues at Delphi, muscles forever flexed. Travelers note the serenity on stone brows, testament that sometimes a swift, dignified curtain call outranks long, ragged applause. Young Taurus, demigod son of Poseidon, pilots a skiff scouting for new colonies. A storm detaches rudder from reality. Mast snaps like uncooked spaghetti. Waves swallow everything but Taurus clinging to driftwood. Poseidon, scanning seafloor currents, flicks his trident. A dolphin larger than a rowboat rockets upward, scoops Taurus, and planes across the wine-dark sea like a living surfboard. At dawn, the dolphin deposits him on Italy's sunlit heel. Taurus climbs a bluff, sees fertile plains ribboned by a gentle river. He plants Poseidon's miniature bronze trident in the sand and declares a new polis. The colony, Tarentum, today's Taranto, mints coins of a boy riding a dolphin, trident aloft. Local fishermen still carve tiny dolphins on prows, tribute to the uncanny GPS system that once delivered a founder to the perfect harbor. Aphrodite and winged son Eros picnicked amid spring anemones, boasting who could gather the loveliest bouquet. With wings, Eros predictably stuffed his basket first. Enter Peristera, a mortal handmaid collecting herbs nearby. Seeing Aphrodite's crestfallen smile, she wordlessly tipped her own armful of blooms into the goddess's basket. Eros protested, "Rules breach." Aphrodite just laughed, victory fragrant in her arms. Jealousy and Cupid's arrows share barbs. Eros flicked one tiny dart and, poof, Peristera shrank into downy white feathers. Aphrodite scooped up the bewildered bird, whispering apologies and protection. Peristera, now a dove, gained a new language of coos and cloud-high freedom. The goddess decreed doves sacred henceforth, harbingers of peace and liaisons for lovers. From Cyprus to Corinth, newlyweds release white doves, so their first horizon carries Peristera's gift. Help your friends win, and you may end up airborne, emblematic, and forever cherished by a goddess who remembers favors. Cretan teenager Epimenides entered a cave seeking a stray lamb. Cool air lulled him into a nap on soft moss. When he stepped back into sunlight, the lamb was a weather-bleached skull, and his town looked upgraded. He'd slept 57 years. Word of the time traveler raced to Athens, then reeling under plague and factional strife. They summoned Epimenides. He prescribed symbolic spring water baths for citizens and a cleansing of unjust murder cases, the world's first state-sanctioned amnesty. He also ringed the city with incense-burning altars to the unknown god, appeasing whichever deity felt snubbed. Within a year, the plague receded, civic tempers cooled. Grateful Athenians offered gold. Epimenides accepted only vines for his Cretan temple, proof that sleep had taught him value over price. Legends credit him with tweaking the Greek lunar calendar and penning riddling prophecies. Even today, Cretan shepherds warn drowsy companions, "Nap too long in a sacred cave, you'll wake up a consultant." Aristaeus, son of Apollo and huntress Cyrene, loved tinkering. Olives here, cheese there. When shepherds complained of wild honey going rancid, Aristaeus studied bees like living alchemy. Nymph tutors taught smoke calming and linen veils. Soon Aristaeus produced honey rumored to heal fevers. Even Olympians craved his combs. One blistering summer, disease wiped out his hives. Desperate, he consulted shape-shifting Proteus, who advised a strange remedy. Sacrifice 4 bulls and leave their carcasses sealed. From decay rose new swarms, robust and disease-proof, the mythical origin of begonia, or bee-birth. Greek farmers copied the ritual symbolically with perfumed ox hides draped over empty hives at spring equinox. Aristaeus planted thyme to flavor future honey, invented the first clay smoker, and dedicated his success to the seasonal Etesian winds, ensuring cool breezes helped the bees cap wax perfectly. Modern beekeepers in Greece still call a sudden helpful wind Aristaeus's breath. Zeus and Hermes, disguised as dusty travelers, canvassed a Phrygian village for lodging. Gold door mansions slammed shut. Only an aged, poor couple, Baucis and Philemon, welcomed them into a mud brick hut. They served cabbage soup, pork scraps, and local wine. Mid-pour, Baucis noticed the jug stayed full. Eyes widened. Guests revealed divine light. The couple's first instinct? Ask the gods to spare their nasty neighbors if possible. Mercy before schadenfreude. Classy. The village morphed into a marsh. The hut blossomed into marble columns. Zeus offered any reward. They chose to be temple keepers and to die together. Years later, as breath slowed, bark crept over their skin. Philemon an oak, Baucis a linden, branches intertwined over the temple forecourt. Travelers claim the twin trunks still rustle blessings on strangers who share food with drifters. Local children leave tiny cups of soup under the roots, because kindness apparently scales from hut to eternity tree. From marble votes that rewrite destiny to bees reborn in golden sunlight, tonight's legends hum one chord. Generosity, of spirit, of risk, of welcome, catches the gods' attention faster than any heroic flex. Drop a comment naming the myth that lit you up and tell us how you'd translate its core gift into today's life. Food bank pop-ups, urban beehives, pop-up nappies. Best idea gets animated into next episode's intro, your username in ancient Greek graffiti. If tonight rekindled your sense that the universe sometimes rewards the generous, like the video, subscribe for more secret corridors of myth and tap the bell so the algorithm's dolphin swims our next story straight to you. Until then, keep a white pebble in your pocket, a spare bouquet for a stranger, and an ear attuned to wind that maybe, just maybe, started in a very old apiary. Ready to wander off the beaten mythological path? You know Zeus's thunderbolts and Hercules' labors. Fine. But what about the day the bees turned their backs on their god, or the huntress whose sons were cursed to become flesh-hungry bears? Or a girl so clever Athena loved her, then hated her enough to shrink her to an ant? And finally, an apple that quite literally broke a young man's heart. Keep watching. Each tale swerves from wonder to horror to bittersweet awe, and the last lines of every story connect like hidden threads. Miss even 30 seconds, and you'll lose the clue that ties them all together. When Zeus married Hera, Hermes carried gold-edged invites to every being, mortal, divine, animal. Chelone, a river nymph, accepted with a careless nod, but when the day came, she sniffed at the sky, poked the embers in her hearth, and sighed, "My little house is warmer than Olympus." Hours later, the wedding procession rolled past in thundercloud pomp. Hermes spotted Chelone's empty chair. Rage ignited in his silver sandals. He swooped down, seized the entire cottage, roof, pillars, walls, Chelone still clutching a teacup inside. One spell later, cottage and nymph fused into a single creature, shell on the back, head poked out, doomed to crawl forever carrying the home she wouldn't abandon. The first tortoise. Locals swear that on spring evenings, if you kneel by a brook and whisper, "Leaving soon?" any tortoise nearby will retreat into its shell, tiny echo of a goddess-scorned recluse. Long before "Save the Bees" was a slogan, there was Aristaeus, demigod shepherd, inventor of cheese, olive oil, and above all, beekeeping. People swore the hum of his hives kept sickness out of the valley. Then one midsummer dawn, every bee lay motionless, wings stiff as parchment. The air that once thrummed with life sat dead and silent. The villagers called it the funeral of the bees. Desperate, Aristaeus trekked through reeds to consult Proteus, the shape-shifting sea prophet. Proteus, half seal, half seer, spat seawater and hissed, "The nymphs of the meadows curse you for the part you played in Eurydice's death. Mourn in their tongue, blood, smoke, and remembrance." The penance? 4 pure bulls and 4 unblemished heifers sacrificed at a spring, their carcasses left to rot beneath the sun, an act so revolting only the gods could read its poetry. Aristeus obeyed, mouth clamped against nausea. On the 3rd sunrise he returned. From one bull's ribcage poured a golden cloud, brand new bees, born from death itself, swirling like incense into the sky. The message was brutal but clear. Regeneration demands sacrifice. Aristeus fell to his knees, honeyed tears streaking his cheeks as the swarm chose his outstretched arms as their first hive. King Minos wanted an army in one soldier, so Hephaestus cast Talos, a walking fortress of molten copper now hardened to bronze. 3 times a day, Talos circled the island. Invaders saw a man-sized sunrise sprinting the shoreline, hurling stones the size of oxen. Yet, the godsmith built Talos with a single flaw, a plug at his ankle sealing a vein that pulsed ichor, divine lifeblood. Cue Jason and the Argonauts, desperate to dock. The witch Medea stepped forward, eyes glinting like mercury. "Mighty Talos, you are metal, but do you feel pain?" She sang of mortality, of rust, of endless duty with no rest. The bronze giant, half mind, half mechanism, knelt, suddenly aware. A breeze teased the nail loose. One crimson gold jet spurted. Talos staggered, knees carving trenches in sand, and crashed, an empty shell echoing like a temple bell. Crete was silent but for the hiss of ichor boiling away. Local fishermen still claim some sunsets tint the sea bronze, Talos's lifeblood swirling just beneath the waves, hunting for its lost shell. Coronis of Thessaly loved Apollo, or thought she did, until a mortal soldier caught her eye. While Apollo healed plague in Delphi, Coronis entertained her new lover in secret. Only the raven, Apollo's avian spy, saw everything. The bird wrestled with the knowledge. If it spoke, a human would die. If it stayed silent, a god would suffer humiliation. Instinct won, loyalty to the sun. It flew for 3 days, trailing white feathers through storm clouds, and crashed onto Apollo's lap to report the betrayal. Apollo's rage was surgical. One golden arrow, one heartbeat, Coronis felled. But as her blood soaked the sheets, guilt hit harder than plague, because Coronis carried his unborn son, Asclepius. Apollo yanked the child from the dying womb, gave him to the centaur Chiron, and spun on the trembling raven. "You wanted me to see darkness. Now wear it." Flames the color of a lunar eclipse licked across white plumage, charring every feather jet black. The raven screeched, not from pain, but from shame immortalized. From then on, ravens lost the ability to speak in clear words. All that's left is the croak that sounds like a secret you can't quite make out. King Salmoneus looked at Olympus and saw a marketing opportunity. He forged iron wheels that struck bronze streets, sparking hellish fire. He hung bronze kettles along rope bridges, and when his servants tugged the ropes, they roared like thunder across the sky. During festivals, he hurled lit torches from his chariot, shouting, "Tremble, mortals! I am Zeus!" Crowds, half fearful, half entertained, showered him with offerings. Thunder for hire became the hottest ticket north of Delphi, but word climbed the air like smoke, reached the real Zeus, who waited for the perfect dramatic sting. On Salmonia's grandest fete, dark clouds gathered, but the sky remained eerily quiet. Salmoneus rode out, ready to drop his counterfeit thunder. Zeus answered with the genuine article, a single bolt that vaporized the rope bridges, melted the bronze road into a river of screaming metal, and hurled Salmoneus, chariot, horses, ego, into Tartarus. There, chained to a rotating rock, he hears only one sound. Authentic thunder he can never claim. Locals swear the ruins of Samonia still ring on electric nights. Metallic echoes of Zeus performing an audit on false advertising. Polyphonte, one-time devotee of Artemis, vowed to remain chaste, but Aphrodite, never fond of holdouts, infected her with lust for a passing bear. Yes, a bear. Polyphonte vanished into the woods and returned months later with twin boys, Agrius and Aureus, towering, coarse-haired, with appetites that chilled the blood. They laughed at altars, hunted travelers, and roasted human limbs over campfires. Zeus finally snapped. He ordered Hermes to punish the whole family in whatever way preserves terror for future ages. Hermes, unwilling to butcher newborns, enlisted Ares, who gleefully bound the twins upside down and hacked off hands and feet. But before the blade fell again, the gods changed their minds, opting for metamorphosis over gore. Polyphonte became the Strix, a death-omen owl whose shriek freezes armies. Aureus twisted into a towering eagle owl, herald of war. Agrius sank into the body of a vulture, forever gnawing carrion. And the family's hillside cave? Locals swear it still reeks of smoke and sweet meat. Farmers mark its mouth with iron nails. Iron, they say, silences bare-born ghosts. Next time an owl howls before battle, remember Polyphonte's cursed lullaby, a mother's love curdled into dread for every soldier who hears it. Athena once chose an Attic girl named Myrmex as her personal protégé. The goddess introduced a dream project, the world's first plow. Myrmex watched, learned, then, intoxicated by the crowd's applause, whispered that she had invented the tool. Athena's gray eyes darkened. Soon after, a jealous wind shoved Myrmex while she harvested wheat. She staggered, dropped an armful of sheaves, and heard laughter, a cruel echo of her own boast. Athena emerged, face sorrowful. You craved the harvest without the humility. She tapped the girl's forehead. Instantly, Myrmex shrank, limbs splitting, waist pinching. An ant scuttled where a maiden had stood, destined to steal crumbs of grain for eternity, mimicking the theft of Athena's credit. Centuries later, Zeus needed loyal subjects for his son Aeacus in barren Aegina. He saw the ant swarm and, in a grim joke, transformed them into soldiers. The Myrmidons, silent, disciplined, famous under Achilles at Troy. The bravest army in myth owes its origin to a single boastful sentence. Medusa grew up alongside the breathtaking Adonis under the roof of King Cinyras. Where Adonis was radiant, Medusa was steady, god, confidant, brother in all but blood. When a boar gored Adonis in Aphrodite's sacred grove, every flower dimmed, and Medusa felt his chest collapse inward. Days later, they brought Adonis's body home. Melas strung a rope from a pomegranate tree and hanged himself, grief carving deeper than any tusk. His wife Pelea followed. Aphrodite arrived, drenched in her own tears, too late to save them, but not too late to transform them. Melas became the apple tree, branches heavy with fruit the color of heart blood. Pelea became the dove, eternal companion to Aphrodite, cooing in the apple's boughs. Their infant son, also named Melas, was spared and ordered to Delos to teach islanders the craft of shearing sheep. Ever since, Greeks call flocks mela in his honor. Legend says when an apple falls perfectly into a lover's open palm, Melas is granting a fragment of his devotion, a reminder that love can be both sweet and lethal. Every crunch echoes a heartbreak older than history. Careful who you offer an apple to. Aphrodite might just be listening. Which boundary breaker freaked you out most? Drop your vote below. Smash like if you'll think twice before faking thunder. Subscribe for Forgotten Monsters next week and ring the bell. Unlike Melinoe, notifications haunt only by day. See you in the echoes. You've heard of a goddess whose beauty was unmatched. But what if I told you that her beauty wasn't what it seemed? In fact, her allure led to some of the darkest consequences in ancient myth. This goddess, adored by many, held the power to captivate anyone with a mere glance. She was so beautiful that her charm could sway the gods, kings, and mortals alike. But this beauty came with a deadly price. The goddess we're talking about is none other than Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love and beauty. While she is often depicted as the epitome of grace, sensuality, and allure, her beauty was more of a curse than a gift. Aphrodite's powers extended beyond just physical beauty. Her charm was irresistible, but it came at a cost. Her very presence could bring turmoil. Many heroes and kings fell victim to their obsession with her. Take Paris, for instance. His decision to choose Aphrodite as the fairest of the goddesses set in motion the events that led to the Trojan War. His desire for her beauty caused the death of thousands and the fall of Troy. But Aphrodite's beauty didn't just destroy men, it could break gods too. The tale of her and Ares, the god of war, exemplifies this. While Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, her passionate affair with Ares led to chaos among the gods. Her beauty wasn't just about attraction, it caused jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately destruction. Despite her dazzling appearance, Aphrodite was also a figure of deceit and destruction, proving that beauty, when it holds such power, can be dangerous. It's no wonder the ancient Greeks warned that appearances can be deceiving. Aphrodite's beauty may have dazzled the world, but her story teaches us that sometimes what's on the surface can mask a much darker reality. So, was Aphrodite's beauty a blessing or a curse? The myths suggest that beauty, when wielded by the gods, is never what it seems. If you want to uncover more hidden truths about gods and goddesses from the ancient world, hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore in these captivating stories of the past. Hor, the thunder god, woke up to find his greatest nightmare had come true. Mjolnir, his mighty hammer that could level mountains and control lightning itself, was gone. Without it, the thunder god was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked. The weapon that defined his very identity as protector of Asgard had vanished without a trace. But what happened next would humiliate him more than any defeat in battle. To get his hammer back, Thor would have to do something that went against every fiber of his warrior identity. You won't believe the disguise he ends up in. It all began on what should have been an ordinary morning in Asgard. Picture Thor reaching for the leather grip that had been at his side for countless centuries, his fingers closing around nothing but empty air. The spot where Mjolnir should rest felt cold and wrong, like a missing tooth that your tongue keeps finding. Thor's morning routine, as predictable as sunrise over Asgard's golden halls, shattered in that single moment of realization. The hammer forged by dwarven masters, the weapon that could summon lightning and level mountains, had vanished without so much as a whisper of sound. The initial shock hit Thor like a physical blow. His hand remained suspended in space, still reaching for what wasn't there. Then panic crept in, cold and relentless. He let out a blood-curdling roar of sheer rage, the whole palace trembling. Without Mjolnir, he was powerless, vulnerable, and mocked, stripped of the weapon that made him Asgard's primary defender. The enemies that prowled the borders of the Nine Realms knew about his mighty hammer. They counted on Thor's strength to keep them at bay. Now that strength was gone. Word spread through Asgard's halls faster than wildfire. The other gods gathered in emergency council, their faces grave as they grasped the full scope of the crisis. Odin's ravens had brought no news. The watchmen at the gates had seen nothing. Mjolnir had simply disappeared, as if it had never existed at all. The assembled gods understood what Thor's loss meant for their realm. Asgard stood vulnerable, its greatest protector reduced to a shadow of his former self. Loki stepped forward through the crowd of worried gods, his familiar, cunning smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He offered to investigate the theft using his shape-shifting abilities, volunteering to venture where other gods could not go undetected. The council accepted his proposal immediately, desperate for any lead in their search. Thor watched his brother prepare for the mission, knowing that Loki's success or failure would determine his own fate. Loki first borrowed Freya's magic feathered coat, allowing him to fly in falcon form to Jotunheim without raising alarms. Each dead end pushed Thor deeper into desperation. He imagined facing his enemies defenseless, their laughter echoing as they realized the thunder god carried no thunder. The trail finally led to the most dangerous territory of all, Jotunheim, the realm of the giants. Loki strode into the council chamber with the confident gait of someone who had solved a mystery, but his expression carried an ominous weight. The giant Thrym, lord of the frost giants, had openly boasted about his theft from his massive throne of ice and stone. He had buried Mjolnir 8 leagues beneath the frozen earth of his realm, thrice deeper than any giant's hall, he claimed, placing it where even Thor's strength would be useless. Thrym had what he thought was a simple demand for the Norse gods. He wanted the beautiful goddess Freya as his bride in exchange for the hammer's return. The giant had fixated on her legendary beauty and grace, convinced that possessing both Mjolnir and the goddess of love would make him the most powerful being in all the 9 realms. His arrogance knew no bounds as he described his elaborate wedding plans to Loki, speaking of golden halls and feasts that would last for weeks. Thrym believed the gods had no choice but to accept his terms. When Loki spoke to the council about Thrym's demand, the council fell silent. Freya's reaction shattered the tense quiet that followed Loki's report, causing her rage to break the Brysinger necklace, its gems scattering across the floor in glittering fragments. She declared she would rather throw herself into the deepest ocean than marry the frost giant who dared make such a demand. The gods found themselves trapped in an impossible situation. They could sacrifice one of their most beloved goddesses to a giant's lust, or they could leave Thor permanently weakened and Asgard vulnerable to every enemy that prowled the borders. The council erupted in frantic debate. Some suggested launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. Others proposed trickery or negotiation, but every path led to either devastating war or humiliating surrender. Heimdall, the far-seeing guardian who watched over the Rainbow Bridge, had remained silent throughout the heated discussions. When he finally spoke, his words stopped every conversation in the hall. His suggestion was so outrageous, so completely unthinkable, that even Loki's jaw dropped open in shock. The gods stared at Heimdall as if he had lost his mind, but they were out of other options. What he proposed, however, would challenge everything Thor stood for as a warrior. Heimdall's words hung in the air like a challenge to the very foundations of Norse honor. The far-seeing god had suggested that Thor disguise himself as a bride and infiltrate Thrym's wedding feast to recover Mjolnir. He spoke with calm authority, tie housewife's keys about his waist, and pin bridal jewels upon his breast. The idea was so fundamentally opposed to Norse concepts of masculine honor that Thor's initial response shook the very walls of Asgard. He declared the plan preposterous and swore he would never hear the end of it if word spread that the Thunder God had dressed as a woman. The assembled gods watched in tense silence as their mightiest protector wrestled with a challenge that could not be solved through brute force or lightning strikes. They had already considered launching a full assault on Jotunheim, but Thrym's fortress was impregnable and his army vast. No other choice remained. Thor paced the hall like a caged wolf, his massive fists clenched as he grappled with the impossible choice between his warrior's pride and his duty to protect Asgard. Every instinct in his body rebelled against the idea of abandoning his identity as a fearsome warrior to play the role of a delicate bride. Loki stepped forward with barely contained excitement, volunteering to accompany Thor as his maidservant. The trickster god's eagerness to participate in this elaborate deception revealed his true nature. While Thor struggled with the concept, Loki was already plotting the specifics of costumes, mannerisms, and the lies they would need to maintain throughout their dangerous mission. The transformation began with layers of bridal linen draped over Thor's massive frame. Servants brought forth delicate jewelry, housewife's keys that symbolized domestic authority, and a dainty hood for his head. Finally came the precious necklace of Brysinger. Each item added to the disguise felt like another blow to Thor's warrior identity. When he finally looked at his reflection, the god of thunder saw an unconvincing bride staring back at him. Thor finally accepted the plan because no alternative existed. The unlikely pair prepared to set off for enemy territory, where their deception would face its ultimate test among giants eager to celebrate their lord's triumph. The great hall of Thrym's fortress buzzed with excitement as giants gathered to witness their lord's marriage to the most beautiful goddess in all the 9 realms. Thor sat at the high table in his bridal disguise, surrounded by massive frost giants who raised their drinking horns in celebration. The feast spread before them displayed the giants' wealth and power. Roasted oxen filled enormous platters, fresh salmon gleamed on silver dishes, and barrels of mead stood ready to fuel the night's festivities. Thor's legendary appetite struck like a thunderbolt. He polished off an ox and ate whole salmon in moments, tearing through the meat as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. 3 measures of mead vanished as quickly as if someone had poured them into a bottomless pit. The assembled giants watched in stunned silence as the delicate bride consumed more food than most warriors could handle. Thrym's eyes narrowed with growing suspicion. This goddess ate like a battle-hardened warrior, returning from a long campaign, not like the refined Freya he expected to marry. Loki stepped forward with the smooth confidence of a master storyteller. He spun a tale about Freya's 8-day fast in eager anticipation of reaching Jotunheim and marrying the mighty Thrym. The explanation painted a picture of a lovesick goddess, so excited about her wedding that she had refused all food during her journey. The giants nodded in understanding, their suspicions melting away as they accepted this romantic explanation. Thrym felt honored by such devotion and relaxed completely, his doubts vanishing. Beneath his bridal veil, Thor's rage simmered like molten metal ready to explode. Every moment at the feast brought new challenges as he struggled to maintain feminine mannerisms while surrounded by his enemies. His massive hands shook with barely controlled fury as he watched the giants celebrate what they believed was their victory over Asgard. The critical moment finally arrived. Thrym commanded his servants to bring Mjolnir forth, the very moment Thor had trained his eyes on since dawn. The servants placed the legendary weapon before the disguised bride as part of the traditional ceremony. Thor's fingers closed around Mjolnir's familiar handle, and lightning immediately crackled through the hall. He ripped away his bridal veil and roared his true identity to the shocked giants. Thrym's eyes widened in terror as he realized the bride he had been celebrating was actually the god of thunder himself. Thor swung Mjolnir, killing Thrym instantly after crushing his skull with Mjolnir, then turned on the assembled giants, and even the pleading giantess met Mjolnir's crack before the hall fell silent. The theft that had begun with arrogance ended in complete destruction. This tale reveals how even the mightiest heroes must sometimes sacrifice their pride to protect what matters most. Back in Asgard, the Aesir never spoke of the bearded bride again, though a few still hide a smirk when Thor raises Mjolnir. And we end this story with a very valuable lesson. Never steal Thor's hammer. And if you're going to, don't make him dress like a woman. Tonight you'll meet the nymph whose beauty made Hades plant a forest in her image, a lover who weaponized an apple to hack a goddess's marriage laws, a king who may have raised the dragon that ate his island, a prophet who lived 7 years as each sex and paid with his eyes, and a royal couple whose wrecked ship still calms the winter seas. 5 deep-cut myths, none repeated from previous episodes. Stick around. The last scene explains why every item you just saw is really the same warning. Luce, daughter of Oceanus, shimmered like morning on still water. Hades saw her bathing on the Styx's shore and felt the ache of something that might have been love, if gods knew limits. He swept her into his shadowy chariot. In the underworld, things don't rot the way they should, they transform. When Luce's mortal bloom began to fade, Hades panicked. Unable to bear her disappearing, he offered the only gift he understood, immortality as landscape. He touched her hair. It stiffened into bark the color of moon-bleached bone. Leaves burst silver as coin flip flashes. Loose the woman became loose the white poplar, blazing at the center of Elysium. Dead heroes rest beneath her, weaving garlands from her two-toned leaves, dark one side, pale the other, to remind them that joy and grief always grow on the same branch. The Cercopes, twin dwarf tricksters Passalus and Acarus, live by trolling. They steal Heracles' bow and club, giggling about how the hero's butt is black as a kettle from soot. Heracles wakes, grabs both by the ankles, slings them over a pole like squirming fish, and marches toward the city to sell them. Dangling upside down, blood rushing to their heads, the twins can't stop roasting him. Even Heracles, no stranger to rage, breaks into reluctant laughter. But Zeus, hearing their unfiltered comedy, decides the world needs more mischief. He transforms them into the first monkeys, bodies still small, faces still grinning, forever swinging by what once bound them, their own tails. Sailors claim the Cercopes occasionally regain speech during eclipses, whispering new insults at any heroic statue within earshot. King Lycurgus hated surprises. When the brand-new god Dionysus marched through Thrace with drums, wine, and ecstatic maenads, Lycurgus saw a security threat. He banned viticulture, arrested Bacchic followers, even ordered his soldiers to whip the vines until they confessed their treason. Dionysus escaped into sea foam, but vengeance fermented quietly. First, the king's barley crops twisted into miniature grape clusters. Then, every cup in the palace turned to wine, no matter what was poured. Finally, Lycurgus woke screaming. Vines were sprouting from his own feet, snaking up his calves, pinning him to the palace floor. He hacked at them only to realize he was slicing his own flesh. The vines were his veins. Driven mad, he swung an axe at what he thought were tendrils on an oak and beheaded his heir. The gods let him blister in that guilt until locals, terrified, bound him and hurled him into Mount Pangaion's man-eating cave. The vines retracted, but his screams never did. Acontius, a handsome nobody from Chios, spots rich girl Cydippe under the temple colonnade. He can't speak to her, class gap miles wide, but he can exploit Olympus's fine print. He scratches on an apple. I swear by Artemis to marry Acontius. He rolls it to her sandal. She idly picks it up and reads the words aloud, which, in Artemis's precinct, equals a binding oath. Cydippe leaves, confused, but every time her father arranges a proper fiancé, she collapses with fever so savage priests fear plague. The oracle digs through the divine TOS and finds the hitch. She's already sworn. When Cydippe finally weds Acontius, the fevers vanish. Artemis shows up, not angry but amused, honoring the couple with everlasting fidelity in exchange for the clever tribute. Moral: speak casually under a goddess's roof, and the contract is in ink you can't see. Long before the Trojan War, the island had no king, only scattered fishermen and goats. Then a stranger arrived, Cycreus, towering, scarred, carrying a bronze spear notched with unknown runes. He spoke little, ate alone, but worked miracles. He dug cisterns where springs burst overnight, charmed a wild stallion into kneeling, and once, locals swear, stood barefoot in a ring of fire to prove courage to the storm god. By year's end, the islanders begged him to rule. They didn't know he walked with a secret. He dreamt every night of fire-scaled dragons devouring his childhood village, and woke with soot under his nails, though no hearth burned nearby. Months after his coronation, goats began disappearing. Nets came up shredded as if bitten by iron teeth. One dusk, a shepherd stumbled into the agora, eyes wide, clutching a bronze scale the size of a dinner plate, edges smoking. He'd found it at the mouth of a cave where the mountain met the sea. Cycreus said nothing, only studied the scale under torchlight. It matched the color of the runes on his spear. That night, villagers saw their king ride alone toward the cave. From cliffs, they watched the torchlight vanish into the maw. Minutes stretched into hours. Then, roaring deep enough to quake wine jars on kitchen shelves, flame burst from the cave mouth. Shadows of two giants, one man, one serpent, wrestled on the cave wall like monstrous puppet theater. At dawn, silence. Cycraeus emerged, armor warped, spearhead glowing red. Behind him dragged the colossal corpse of a sea dragon, neck twisted, fangs snapped, eyes like boiled copper. The island erupted in praise. They crowned him with laurel and called him Draken Soter, dragon's savior. Yet some noticed his smile was hollow, as if slaying the beast had lanced a boil he secretly cherished. After the triumph feast, Cycraeus changed. He paced battlements at midnight, muttering in a guttural tongue. His bathwater steamed black. Servants insisted the steam coiled like a serpent before dissolving. One harvest festival, a child accidentally spilled wine on his boots. Cycraeus roared, eyes flashing ember orange, and the boy swore he saw scales ripple under the king's skin. Rumors spread. Had the battle fused man and monster? Or darker, had Cycraeus never slain the dragon at all? Had he absorbed it? When storms flattened olive groves and fishermen found their nets burnt as though by underwater fire, the islanders panicked. They begged Eurystheus of Athens to intervene. The hero sailed with 50 hoplites, each carrying asbestos-soaked nets and mirrored shields to confuse reptilian eyes. But at the gate they met not a beast, only their king, bare-chested, spear discarded, arms raised. Cycraeus confessed the dragon's fury had leaked into him. He'd battled it outside and now battled it within, losing ground each night. "Bind me or burn me," he said. Eurystheus chose mercy darker than execution, exile. He ferried Cycraeus to Eleusis, gift-wrapping the cursed king for the goddess Demeter, whose own grief could understand corrupted power. Demeter accepted, appointing Cycraeus as guardian of her holy processions, his inner fire now repurposed to ward off all lesser threats. As Cycraeus's ship slipped away, islanders swore the shoreline hissed, not from waves, but from a dragon's whisper receding with its unwilling host. Salamis kept the dragon's bronze scales nailed above city gates for centuries, tarnished mirrors reminding every leader, "Conquer your monsters, yes, but never wear their skins." Power taken from terror carries terror's seed. When rage becomes crown, abdication may be salvation. Young hunter Tiresias strikes the snakes with his staff. Hera curses him into a woman for 7 years. He marries, bears children, learns the loom songs of grief men never hear. 7 winters later, he meets the serpents again, carefully steps over them, spell breaks. He's male once more. Later, Zeus and Hera bicker. Who enjoys love more, man or woman? They drag Tiresias in as data point. He sides with Zeus. Women feel 9 times the pleasure. Hera, furious, blinds him. Zeus, guilt-struck, gifts prophecy and a lifespan of 7 generations. Thus, the greatest seer of Thebes walks the tightrope of fate without eyesight, yet clearer vision than any living soul. It's said he chuckled on his deathbed. "Blind, I've seen 2 worlds, inside and out." King Ceyx sails to consult an oracle. Wife Alcyone prays he waits for calmer weather. He doesn't. Zeus, annoyed that Ceyx invoked him too often in casual oaths, hurls a thunderstorm that swallows the ship. Ceyx's spirit, soaked and shivering, begs Iris to carry a goodbye. Sleep god Morpheus impersonates Ceyx's drowned corpse in Alcyone's dream. She wakes screaming, runs to the surf. There's the real body, ghost pale in foam. In raw despair, she leaps after him. The gods, pierced by this double plunge, morph the lovers mid-air into halcyon birds, kingfishers with royal blue backs. To let their floating nest survive, Zeus stills the winter seas for 14 days every January. Sailors call it the halcyon days, when storms bank their rage and even grief takes a coffee break. Which transformation slapped hardest? Tree, oath, dragon, gender shift, or bird? Hit the comments. Smash like. If you'll think twice before reading random fruit out loud, subscribe for next week's plunge into the three mortals who blackmailed the fates. And ring that bell. Unlike Zeus's thunder, it won't roast you for imposter syndrome. See you in the halcyon calm. You thought fairy tales were magical. Think again. The real origins of these classic tales are disturbing, gruesome, and filled with horror. Many of these stories have been sanitized for modern audiences, but their original versions were filled with betrayal, curses, and brutal consequences. From Pinocchio's horrifying fate to the true story of Bluebeard, let's dive into the darker side of fairy tales that history tried to erase. Fairy tales weren't always about happily ever after. Many of them were cautionary tales, warning of real dangers, human cruelty, and supernatural horrors. 1. The original Pinocchio, a gruesome fate. Before Disney made him a lovable puppet, Carlo Collodi's original Pinocchio was a terrifying little troublemaker. Instead of learning his lesson, he was hanged from a tree by a group of bandits, left to suffocate as a punishment for his misdeeds. 2. Bluebeard, the serial killer's tale. Bluebeard was not a misunderstood nobleman. He was a full-blown serial killer. In Charles Perrault's version, Bluebeard marries multiple women and forbids them from entering one locked room. When his latest wife disobeys, she discovers the corpses of his past wives hanging from hooks. He nearly kills her too, but she's saved at the last second by her brothers.